Not using the correct punctuation is a nightmare when it comes to reading dialogue, but also for the way that it looks and it flows. You're back, and I am so glad, because today we are talking about dialogue. Dialogue is so very important in a good story. In fact, it can make or break your entire story, because really, what is a story without conversation? Good dialogue can help move your story along. It can help your reader get to know your characters, how they interact with each other, and who they are as people. It's all well and good telling your reader that a character is a snarky bitch, but it's always better to show it with how she treats people and the way she speaks. Dialogue can be hard to get right, but with practice and the right tools, you too can be a dialogue wizard. This is going to be a two-part lesson, with today being the technical aspects of dialogue writing, and next week tweaking it to get it right. So let's get going, shall we? The first thing I always advise anyone who is having dialogue problems is to read it aloud. That is so important. That way you'll be able to tell if it feels stilted or if it doesn't flow naturally at all. If it's too long that you're struggling to get it all out in one breath, too short and you'll feel like you're running a race with your words, and too boring and you will notice it. Listen to other people. Listen to their conversations and see how they interact with each other. Sit in a cafe and listen to the things that people talk about, how the conversations like bounce back and forth. Watch chat shows and look at the things people talk about. You should be paying attention to their speech patterns, the pauses that they make, and the actions that they make when they're speaking. Always remember to use full English in your dialogue, not regional dialect, shortened words or strange spellings. This is the one and only time that I will advocate telling over showing. Tell your reader that your character has an accent. Don't attempt to write that accent. At best, you might confuse and alienate a number of readers, especially if English is not their first language. At worst, you might be downright insulting, especially if you are a writer that is trying to write an accent that you have absolutely no clue about. I know that sounds bad, but it's true. If you, for example, right, if you're an American and you don't know any Scottish people whatsoever, and you haven't spent a lot of time in Scotland, and you have no real idea about it, other than watching like TV shows or seeing people's accents on TV or hearing them speak on the radio, please, please, please do not attempt to do a Scottish accent, because you will likely get it completely wrong. And then you'll have people that are Scottish that are going to be so insulted that you think this is how they speak. I've seen accents written in a number of books, and honestly, it's only ever worked for me in like one book series, and that's the Outlander books by Diana Gabaldon, and that is because she is an amazing writer and she has immersed herself in the culture and the speech patterns and the way people talk of Scotland. She has not just decided to pluck it out of thin air and make a story about it and to put Scottish characters in there. She has paid her dues. She's visited, she's done location research, she's spoken to tons of Scottish people, and she's made sure that she's had Scottish people reading the books to make sure that it is not overdone or that it doesn't make sense or that it's insulting. If you cannot do all of those things, do not even attempt it, please. That being said, I've also read a number of books where it didn't work at all. It was awkward, it was clunky to read, and after a few pages it became very, very annoying and very hard to ignore. It throws off the entire rhythm of the book and the dialogue. The worst I had was from an author that I've been reading for years, and I've loved her books for a long time, and the thing is I always enjoy reading them. It's like kind of one of my go-to authors, my comfort books, that it's not particularly dark, it's not particularly depressing. There's action and romance in it, but it's not like too full on the whole time. It's a nice pace breaker between some of the more in-depth, dark and hard kind of books that I do read. This book was awful. In fact, I'd even go as far to say it was, in my opinion, it was badly written. It was so annoying to read her Scottish character. Because of the bad writing, I ended up not connecting with the character at all, and it took me so long to actually finish the book. I kept giving up on it. I forced myself to finish it only because it was part of a series and I needed to know what was going to go on for the next book. And I rarely ever say that about any of my favourite authors' books. This was one of them, and the only thing that really let it down was the character dialogue. Another problem that a lot of people have with dialogue is that they use their dialogue as a way to impart information that is relevant to the plot or the backstory of the characters. Now, this is a common trick of the trade, and it can be very, very effective, but we start getting issues with it when you turn a little into a lot. Information should be sprinkled like casually and sparingly throughout your dialogue and your narrative in general. It should add depth to your story like a well-used seasoning. What you need to avoid is the dreaded info dump. Think of it this way. If you were having a conversation with a friend and you asked them if they remembered that time that you got really drunk and stole a gnome from someone's front garden. That is not something I've done, by the way. It's just an example because I do have a friend that did that. They wouldn't need you to go into a long rundown of the whole night. Why you went out in the first place, who else was there, why you were depressed, all to get to the point of the gnome. Your friend will remember. That's what they do. They remember all your embarrassing moments. The golden rule is that if you wouldn't do it in real life, don't do it in your books. The same goes for exposition in dialogue. Using dialogue to get your character to explain their whole backstory can work in some circumstances, like if the characters are meeting for the first time or are just in the getting to know you stages. But it definitely does not work if it's between two friends who already know each other well. And even if it is the right time to do it, you need to make sure that you break it up with sufficient movement and breaks in the flow of the character speech. Otherwise, it's just going to be a massive dialogue and a massive storytelling that no one's going to really want to read. They're going to skip a bit of it, or they're going to find it boring. Not using the correct punctuation is a nightmare when it comes to reading dialogue, but also for the way that it looks and the way it flows. This is one of the most common mistakes that writers make, and one that will put off a lot of readers, editors and publishers if that's the way that you want to go. Making your characters tell how they feel rather than showing is a thing that a lot of novice writers have a problem with. Your dialogue is not just about the actual words that your characters are speaking. It's about the actions, the tone and the way that they act. It all combines to become part of your dialogue. Never forget what you are trying to achieve with your dialogue. It's all too easy to go off on a tangent and to forget the point of the speech. So, I want you to ask yourself the following things. What is the purpose of this dialogue? What are you trying to do with it? What are you trying to say with this piece of dialogue? Are you trying to show the character's vulnerability, their sad story, or maybe their sense of humour? Make sure that you keep the purpose in mind and drag it back on point if you stray, because tight dialogue is a must. Does this dialogue advance the plot? If the answer is honestly no, then cut it. Cut it, cut it, cut it. We expect a little bit of casual conversation in our books, but not every 10 seconds. Keep it simple. If it doesn't do anything for the plot, if it doesn't advance it or add anything to the character relationships, cut that shit. Gone. Does it reveal a character? By this, I mean, does it tell your reader anything about your character? Is it part of your character's development? If the answer is no, it's gotta go. Does it reveal a character? Okay. By this, I mean, Does it tell your reader anything about your character? Is it part of your character's development? If the answer is no, it's got to go. Does it show conflict or tension? Is it one of these we gotta talk moments? Is it an argument between two characters? Is it the boss giving the character an impossible task to do in a too short amount of time? If the answer is no to these questions, then you likely do not need this speech. And finally, does it impart important information? And by that I mean, does it pertain to the character? Is it important to the plot? Is it something that we have to know as a reader, or is it just their favourite flavour of ice cream that you mention because you think it's a fun little anecdote? If you shook your head at this, then I think it needs to get gone. And lastly, but by no means least, a little reminder that your characters and your dialogue are not a place to air your political views if it does nothing to advance the plot, show the characters in a certain way, or as a way of showing the negativity of intolerance. Nothing will put a reader off faster than a politically opinionated character. Now, I don't mean that your female can't be like a feisty feminist or anything like that, but you should try to steer away from any political leanings, attacks on politicians or the government in general. This also includes social issues, personal beliefs on controversial issues, political correctness, or any intolerance of race, religion, gender or sexuality. Get down off your soapbox. Okay, so we've got time for today. Don't forget to pop back for our second part when I will show you how to get the most out of your dialogue and how to add a little extra flair. Until next time, blessed be and happy writing.